My name is Ronika Jacobs, and you found my podcast, Strive for More, Your Best Life Now. While there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, you've taken the time out to listen to this one. So for that, I would like to say thank you. So without any further delay, let's get to it. Let's strive for more.
My next guest, Thom King, is helping people strive for more in the area of health and wellness. Thom is the CEO of Saviva Brands Incorporated. He founded this company in 1999 and is one of the largest importers, manufacturers, and distributors of clean label sweetening systems and natural sweeteners. In this episode, he will discuss his process and journey of being an entrepreneur and how he determined his why for starting a business. Hi, Thom. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
I'm doing terrific, Ronika. Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is a great way to start my Saturday, and I'm so looking forward to engaging you in some conversation.
Anytime I meet someone who is a true entrepreneur, where they really have taken the time out to build a brand, and I'm not taking a shot at other entrepreneurs and other people who have started companies, but there are a lot of people, they start companies and they really haven't thought about everything, from start to finish and all the facets that are involved. And as I've been doing research for your episode, and research on you, you truly have thought about what your brand is and what you want to present to the world. I think that's amazing. So how did you come about this process, with the Viva brand, because it's hard. Like, we got sweeteners out there, so you got to be able to stand out, right? So talk about that process, Bertie.
Well, for me, I'd say it was a big process of multiple failures, and, that I just converted over to opportunities to learn, but more importantly, grow. So, it was just, I honestly, my background was marketing and intellectual property law, and, never did I think that I would be getting involved as an ingredient supplier and, a supplier of sweeteners. But yeah, I guess you could say it was just serendipitous. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and ran into a gentleman who had just come back from Paraguay with a vial of crushed up leaves in a paste, and he asked me to try it. I'm like, all right, let's see what this is. And so I tried it, and it was about 25 times sweeter than sugar, and I was just completely blown away by it. I was just obsessed. And at that point, I think that's when my true sort of entrepreneurial side kicked in, because I thought, if somebody could find a way to extract these sweet constituents from these leaves, this would be a great natural replacement for aspartame, which was the sweetener, that was most prevalent at the time. And that is what began my journey.
Sweeteners, like how because there's a million different businesses. Of course, with the guy coming back with the crushed seeds and all of that. But, why sweeteners in particular?
Well, you know what? I am I would say a reformed sugar addict. And, there's a lot of people that I run into that say, oh, yeah, I'm addicted to sugar. Well, let me tell you, they don't know what addicted to sugar is until you are really addicted to sugar. And so, in my youth, I used to take a can of Pepsi and actually empty a little out, and then pour a bag of M&Ms into the Pepsi. So it was like I could not get enough. I could not get enough sugar. And so as I got older, I started to see that, consuming so much sugar was having an effect on me. It affected my weight. It affected my ability to focus. And so that's when, I started a battle with sugar. And then, so when I ran into those leaves, the stevia leaves, that's when, for me, it defined my why. Like, why would I do this? Because I am, a recovering sugar addict, and I know that there's others out there that are also recovering sugar addicts. And this gave me an opportunity to do good, and, not only for others, but for myself, and then also to do well. And that was really the why behind, okay, sweeteners, this is what it's going to be.
Now, you talk about that your products, as far as sweeteners, they can effectively help to combat metabolic disease. Can you kind of explain a little bit first, what is a metabolic disease for the listeners?
Yeah,
some people might understand that.
That's a really good question. And metabolic disease is when your body is unable to be able to metabolize the sugar that you're bringing into your body, which means that when you eat, let's say you eat a donut, okay, and your body is only able to metabolize so much of those sugars that you're bringing in, and then the rest of it is stored as lipids, which is fat, and it means belly fat. And so as you store more belly fat, and your body is trying to produce more insulin to be able to, to equalize the amount of sugar that you're putting in, what happens is something that's called insulin resistance. And it means that your body's not producing enough insulin to keep you stable. And that's where you see people suffering from type 2 diabetes. It's like, well, I'm taking drugs to be able to help balance my blood sugar. And really what that means is to help balance my insulin. And so when you become insulin resistant, that's when metabolic disease starts to set in. And you can usually, even just looking at somebody, you can immediately tell if they're suffering from metabolic disease because the weight gathers right around the midsection. So when you see people that got skinny legs, skinny arms, but in that, in their midsection, they're carrying a lot of weight. If they're pear-shaped and stuff like that, that is where your body is storing all of the sugars that you're taking in that you're unable to metabolize. So if we were cavemen, that would make sense because, we'd go through periods of feast and famine, and you'd want to store that fat so you could have it during times of famine. But we don't live like that anymore. Like we're not running from saber-toothed tigers and bears and dinosaurs. We're living in a world of somewhat abundance. We've got plenty of food.
No, that's true, and it's amazing. We are, especially in the United States, we are a country of abundance, and my goodness, and let's not even get into the conversation about wastefulness. But you're right, though. But, lots of people say, I'm a professed foodie. That's kind of the term that people throw around as just being a foodie and all of that. But then, as of late, there has been this great push for natural and organic food options in a lot of, restaurants that are what we call, farm to table, which they're restaurants that I love, absolutely love. So what types of products can you offer to business owners who are restaurant owners? Like what types of sweeteners and products does your company provide?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so, we're probably one of the leading suppliers in the United States, if not globally, of alternative sweeteners for food manufacturers. So as far as like restaurants go, we don't supply a ton of restaurants, but we do have, like for bigger restaurants, they'd be able to, buy our sweeteners from us. And there's a variety of sweeteners that we have that work and function in different applications. Like if you're looking to cook or bake with a sweetener, we have sweeteners that actually will that work with leavening, so you've got products that actually rise, like yeast and baking powder, and we have sweeteners that caramelize, similar to sugar, but none of them actually contain, regular sugars. They're all alternative sweeteners that are all natural, that don't raise blood sugar levels and don't perpetuate metabolic disease. So there's several sweeteners to choose from, and that's where we really work with customers that they come to us and they're like, hey, you know what, we've got a recipe for a bake mix. Right now it's got 23 grams of carbohydrates and 10 grams of added sugars, and we would like this to be more keto friendly, or at least have reduced sugar. And that's where we step in, and it's like, yeah, we can help you with this recipe and give you some solutions. So more than a sweetener company, I like to think of us as a solutions provider.
Wow. Well, and that's what a true entrepreneur does, is they provide an alternative solution to a problem. And I think you're doing a great job of that. So why specifically should a person use the Viva brand? I mean, of course, there's all these other sweeteners out there, right, that both that are different from just traditional sugar. So what makes your product that much more different? Like, what are you doing to stand out?
Well, I mean, I would say that our processes are more natural, and we don't have any fillers. So, like, if you go to the market, and you're looking for stevia, or you're looking for alternative sweeteners, you're going to find a lot of those sweeteners contain fillers, and a lot of times those fillers are called maltodextrin, and they're starches, and they don't really help. I mean, you might get some calorie abatement, but you're still going to be getting sugars and starches. So we don't add any of those starches or things that extend, our sweetener. I mean, they're all natural ingredients, and none of them are designed as fillers. So I would say that that's probably, one of our differential competitive advantages. I'd also say that another advantage that we have is that we third-party test all of our ingredients. So when we start bringing ingredients in to manufacture our sweetener blends, we test them for, heavy metals, yeast, molds, and anything that even petrochemicals. Sometimes there's arsenic in some products that people bring in, but we test all of that. And our process that we use of extracting these sweet constituents uses only water, like hot water, and some alcohol, some natural vegetable alcohol. So I think that our products are just a little cleaner, and I think that over time that really makes a difference.
And I know, having a sweetener company, you really have to research all about sugar and what it really does to the body. Even though we love it, like you said, you're a recovering addict. I know, I try so hard not to put lots of sugar in my coffee, but I find myself putting 3 or 4 packs of sugar, and it's just like, what are you doing, Renika? You're putting all this sugar in your coffee. And so I often wonder, with the crash, I don't know if it's the coffee. I think it might be the sugar, the amount of sugar you put in there. But can you kind of share, as you go along your research, what you have found, why sugar is so bad and what it does to us? Aside, I know people understand about the whole process of diabetes. We get that part. But, can you truly, share with the listeners, as they're striving for more and better health, truly, what does sugar do to us, and why do we need an alternative sugar or sweetener?
Right. Well, I would say, first and foremost, the interesting thing about sugar is that it triggers the same pleasure zones in your brain as cocaine. So what can happen is that, and you can even look at the American palate, in comparison to, other countries, our perception of sweetness is so greatly exaggerated. So what I mean by that is that, once you have a little sugar, then you're going to need a little more sugar and a little more sugar and a little more sugar. So what I found over the years is when I help our customers reformulate their products, that it's usually 2 to 3 times sweeter than other products on a global level, and it's because we've become sort of desensitized to a sweet taste. And, so I'd say that probably, when people say, oh, yeah, I'm a sugar addict, well, that's a real thing, because it is triggering those particular zones in your brain that drive your desire to have more and more and more. And so the more you have, the sicker you become, because your body's only able to metabolize so much sugar. So if you're taking in too much sugar, all it's doing is it's shifting your metabolism. It's storing it as as lipids or fat around your middle. So it's sort of a self-perpetuating addiction and disease.
I definitely can tell, when it comes to sugar and using sugar, even with my kids, even as a kid, even my own self, I've caught my kids, and I can remember as a kid, like eating just pure sugar, like reaching into the sugar jar and just like pouring sugar, into your mouth. And as a kid, you're not understanding. You're just knowing, like, it just tastes so good. But then after a while, you realize, pouring, like, you get your cornflakes or your Frosted Flakes or Cheerios, and putting all that sugar into your cereal. So where you finish your cereal, I don't know if you've ever, did this as a kid, and then you have all your milk, and then, like, there's all this sugar that's left over, and it's just interesting that you don't think about it as a kid, that you're eating all of that, and that the effect long-term it will have on your body later as it relates to your metabolism. Because when you're young, you don't think about your metabolism. That's the least of your worries. You don't think about that. You don't think about that till you get older.
Yeah, well, there's another factor to it as well. I mean, you can look at, metabolic disease and diabetes, but when you really start peeling away the layers and you start looking at cancer, it's cancer cells feed on glucose. And, that might sound like a controversial statement, but it is completely not. So when somebody goes in for a PET scan, to see if they've got cancer or to see if the cancer cells are growing that they have, they actually give you a shot of a glucose serum, with a radioactive isotope in it that shows up under your PET scan. And so the reason it shows up is because the cancer cells are so hungry for glucose. They're so hungry for sugar that the uptake shows up because it shows where all of those radioactive isotopes are going. And that is how they, that's how they can measure tumors and stuff like that outside of the body with a PET scan. So, I mean, if you can eliminate sugar, I'm not saying it's a cure for cancer if you eliminate sugar, but it will certainly slow the growth of cancerous tumors. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors behind, a reason why a person should eat less sugar. One of them is metabolic disease, but also, the secondary one is cancer, and also like neurological, conditions like Alzheimer's, and dementia. I mean, those are being referred to now as diabetes type 3 because it is also a function of having too much glucose in your system, and your brain is unable to actually flush out, all of the used up material because of this. So, I mean, there's so many factors that eating too much sugar leads to. And we don't really need to eat added sugar. Like, if you have a small piece of fruit, that is going to be probably just about as much sugar as you're going to need for the day. So, and when you look at processed food as well, like the question I get asked so much, and it's interesting to me, I get asked repeatedly, it's like, well, is this a conspiracy by food manufacturers for us to get addicted to their foods? Because when you look at processed food, you go down the processed food aisle and you start reading labels, you're just going to see label after label with added sugars and added sugars. So people that buy into the whole conspiracy theory thing, think that food manufacturers are adding this to food to get you addicted. But that's not true. I don't think that that's true at all. I think that food manufacturers, there's a lot of them that are great companies, but the reason that they use so much sugar is because sugar is cheap. So sugar is a subsidized crop. Like our government subsidizes sugar, the sugar industry. And so they can sell sugar so cheap. And if they go to a company, let's say ketchup, right? So ketchup has more sugar than ice cream. It's crazy. And so when you look at the original recipes for ketchup, it was just basically tomato paste, vinegar, and there would be some sugar in it, but it wasn't like it is now where the number one ingredient in ketchup is sugar. And the reason that is because it's so cheap. It's 15 cents a pound, where buying tomato paste and other ingredients can run, $1 to $2 a pound. So when you start doing the economics to it, it just makes sense for a company to add sugar because it's a cheap ingredient and it tastes good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it does.
It does.
And it's interesting because as a kid, I really wasn't. After a while, I kind of shifted, and I didn't eat a lot of sweets. I really wasn't into a lot of candy and sugar and like cookies and cakes and stuff. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, bring on the red velvet, and bring on the red velvet cheesecake. Pancakes and it's just insane, and then just more and more. Yeah. And I realize as I get older, my metabolism is not the same as it used to be. Mm-hmm. So and my energy as well. And speaking of energy, so keto. Of course, there's people understand ketosis and trying to get that your body into that certain range level, right? And everybody's got these different keto diets that they're trying to try, even though, it's also found that you have to be careful to get your body into that certain state, and it needs to be a slow process and not a quick process. So talk a little bit about how keto can really multiply your energy so people can really understand the benefits of being in that state, in a keto state. And then you have a new line of products, right, that are for the keto lifestyle. So just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I like that you use the term lifestyle, because keto needs to be a lifestyle in order for it to be effective. Because, I used to practice keto intermittently. So what I would do is I would eat whatever I wanted. I'd start getting fat. When I started seeing that I was putting on too much weight, I would do Atkins, which at the time was keto-ish. It's not really fully keto, but I would use it as sort of a modality to lose weight when I got fat. But when I wrote my book, Guy Gone Keto, it was sort of the perfect storm, because I was carrying about 35 pounds of extra weight. I was in Las Vegas. I was having dinner with one of my suppliers, and they bought, and I had steak, and I had potatoes, and I had wine, and I had cake. And I went back up to my room, and I looked in the mirror, and I was just hit that point where the pain of how I looked and how I felt exceeded the pleasure that I was deriving from eating all the carbs and all the sugar. And at that point, that's when I just sat down with a pencil and a journal, and I started writing down the things that it would take to actually make a lifestyle. And I would say the greatest epiphany that I had while I was doing that is that, right now I'm living to eat, and I need to shift that from eating to live. And, that journey, that I wrote into that book is really helped me. And it led me to this point of self-discovery where it's like our bodies are these amazing, they're just amazing factories. Like our liver is just it's multi-purpose. Like our liver will metabolize fructose. So when you eat a piece of fruit, it'll metabolize fructose and puts it into fat storage. But it also metabolizes fat. So our liver is like this fat metabolizing machine, and if you deprive your body of carbs and sugars, your liver will really move on the fat. Okay, so let's take this fat and let's just convert it. And so your your liver actually takes the fat and converts it to ketones. And a lot of people are like, well, what are ketones? And it's like ketones are actually compounds that your brain can metabolize instead of glucose. And the only thing I can tell you is when your body moves from metabolizing glucose and metabolizing sugars, for its source of energy, and it starts metabolizing fats as your source of energy, it's like somebody turned the light up in the room. Like you just wake up and it's like, whoa, I have all this energy. I don't need coffee. I don't need my afternoon nap. And the clarity, like your brain, you don't get brain fog. It just completely clears. And that's the feeling of actually being in ketosis. And how you get there is you eliminate sugar and carbs. Like the ketogenic diet really relies mostly on fat. So you're eating 70% fat, you're eating 20% protein, and 10% carbs. And those carbs all come from vegetables. And vegetables that grow above the ground, not under the ground like potatoes, but above the ground like broccoli and lettuce and cauliflower. And if you are able to adopt that lifestyle, you'll have longevity, you'll have mental clarity, you'll have more energy, and you're going to lose a lot of weight. Your body is going to normalize, and you'll be at that normal weight that you should be, because that's how our bodies function best.
Wow. And I try my best to live the most, healthy lifestyle and cook and, not putting too many, seasoning and salt. Salt is actually my vice, not so much as sugar. But salt is the one that I'll pop popcorn and then I'll put extra salt on it. And, people are like, why are you adding salt to your popcorn? So, but, and it's just, but we all have it. It's either you're on the sugar side or you're on the salt side, or maybe you're on both, and just really understanding all these additives, that we're adding to our foods, because our foods are rich enough. And I think we really need to, as we're saying, we're these great foodies, we need to really understand that our foods are rich enough, and without adding, all this extra stuff to it, and just learn to really just appreciate the foods that we have just at a very organic level, but who knows how we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, I would say like salt. I love salt. And salt is necessary. Salt is actually an electrolyte. So I think salt in moderation is critical for your health. Like without salt, you're going to start getting muscle cramps, and eventually if you don't have any salt in your system, your heart will stop, because salt is sort of a conductor of electricity, gives you heartbeat rhythm, keeps your nervous system going. So it's like when you have too much salt is where it can start to raise your blood pressure levels and, and have a detrimental effect. But I also think that it's important the type of salt that you eat. So like I prefer like a pink Himalayan sea salt, because it's so rich in minerals. And you know what? I actually put a little bit in my water. So I like to keep my electrolytes up. But, popcorn, I don't really eat popcorn that often, because popcorn's not really keto. But if you start considering other spices, that you can add to things to offset your desire for salt, you can put on popcorn nutritional yeast, and it gives it a really nice, sort of a cheese type flavor. Or you can use garlic. You can also use pepper. You can use lemon juice in place of salt. And, you shouldn't remove salt from your diet, but if you reduce your salt, it probably isn't going to hurt you.
I thought about that, because I think, well, I don't know how much salt I'm supposed to have, but I just do like it. But you're right. Everything in moderation. And that's truly what it is within our bodies, and living, a healthy lifestyle, and just understanding, trying not to go overboard, and really recognizing, like, if there's something that you're eating and you don't feel good after you eat it, then you probably don't need to have it, right? But how often do we pay attention to that, right?
Yeah, and that's where the philosophy of living to eat versus eating to live. And if you can make that shift, where it's like, hey, you know what, I've been given this gift, this sacred, precious gift of a human body to get me around and to have experiences, and a lot of people take that for granted. But without our body, without being able to be mobile, our lives essentially come to an end. And this is our vehicle in being able to experience the world. And if you want to continue experiencing it, and you want to continue experiencing it, with joy and health, making sacrifices and not always looking for immediate gratification, and not living to eat, but eating to live, and taking care of your vessel, your vehicle that gets you around. I think that is a pathway that, that's far more satisfying than sitting down and eating a piece of chocolate cake with ice cream, whipped cream, and a cherry on top.
Absolutely. So there's something that you like to do, and I hope I'm saying the name right. What in the world is kintsugi? Am I saying it right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I last year started really getting into, I love meditation and journaling and, and mindfulness, but I think that one of the things that sort of brought all of those elements together was, when I started reading and practicing kintsugi. And so kintsugi it's the art of breaking a pot. Mostly it's like you see bowls. So somebody, like an artist or a craftsperson will break a bowl, and then that bowl is reassembled. And when you reassemble it, you use like epoxy, but when you're finishing it, you fix those cracks with gold. So they're actually, a kintsugi bowl has these cracks that, that are gold. And that's where the real beauty of of that bowl comes through. Because the message in it is that it's the broken pieces of ourselves that make us beautiful. And it's those broken pieces that we mend together and heal that are actually stronger than the rest of the bowl. And so it's become this real practice for me in understanding my brokenness, other people's brokenness, and how we can mend ourselves in every area. And those spaces of ourselves that we mend and heal are always stronger than the whole. And it's just, it really became like an obsession where if anything broke, I'm like, oh, I got this. I'll make a kintsugi out of it. So it's like we have things around the house that aren't bowls, but things that have just gotten broken that I've decided to fix rather than throw away, and actually fix and make a statement about it, that those broken pieces, are the things that make that beautiful and make it stronger. So that's kintsugi for me.
Man, you're such an interesting guy. This is really cool. All right, well, I have one last question, and it has really nothing to do with what we've been talking about. So my question to you is, who would you want to play you in a biographical film about your life? Like, who would play Thom King?
That's a really good question. I always go to Brad Pitt because for the obvious reasons, but I would say Brad Pitt because I've seen him really in some more heavy pieces, where he's really stretched himself as an artist. Like, and Fight Club is my favorite movie, and I think that I don't really see myself in Brad Pitt, but if he could play that role, I would certainly be flattered.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Thom, I really appreciate you and, you sharing your wisdom and your journey of becoming an entrepreneur and building this wonderful brand. I'm really educating the listeners about sweeteners and what it does to our bodies and, understanding metabolic diseases. Can you do me a favor? Can you let people know how they can get your product?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Monica. If you want to see like the product line in the book that I wrote, it's my side hustle. So, you could see you get to see my true self there. So it's just Guygon Keto. And you can go to GuygonKeto.com. You can go to any of the socials, hashtag Guygon Keto, @Guygon Keto. You find me all over the place. If you want to see my, the company that I'm the CEO of, go to iconfoods.com, and there's a lot of cool science stuff on there. If you're a science geek, check it out. But always feel free to direct message me if you got questions about my lifestyle, about some of my philosophies. Feel free to DM me on Guygon Keto or Icon Foods.
Wonderful. Thom, any words of encouragement for the listeners as they strive for more?
Well, yes. And I mean, we all have to sort of admit that these are the craziest times that any of us have ever lived through. And I'm kind of an eternal optimist. And I mean, we just went through 2 weeks of smoke, where I live, where we couldn't even see the sun. It was just blotted out. And yesterday I saw the sun for the first time in 2 weeks. And it seriously moved me. And it made me really realize that everything is sort of temporary. Like, good things are temporary, but so are bad things. And the times that we're going through now, they're going to change, and we're going to heal. And I would say, to go back to, what my mom used to always tell me when I was down in the dumps, is that, the darkest hour is just before dawn. And I really feel that if we can all galvanize, if we can all get together, and we can show each other a little more grace and a little more love, that our best days could possibly be ahead of us.
Wonderful words of encouragement. Thom, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance in your future.
Uh-huh.
Please take care.
Yes, likewise. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and I love the questions and love what you do.
Are you interested in growing your business? Then send me an email at striveformore@email.com. You can advertise and spotlight your business on one of my episodes. I would be delighted to help you grow your business and expose your product or service to a brand new audience. Continue to strive for more and live your best life now. See you in the next episode.